AI600, using the work of other auditors. When the principal auditor uses the work of another auditor, the principal auditor should determine how work of the other auditor will affect the audit. The principal auditor should lead the planning, especially the timing of the group audit, the specific risk area and audit procedures, etc. The other auditor should cooperate with the principal auditor. As an example, to advise principal auditor for any significant event that may have an important impact on the audit of consolidated financial statements. The principal auditor need to satisfy that all material areas of the financial statements of the subsidiaries have been audited. The principal auditors would advise the other auditor about the independent requirements and obtained from the other auditors a written representation that they have complied with independence issues. The principal auditor would inform the other auditor of matters such as areas requiring special consideration and procedures for identification of intercompany transaction for disclosure. Principal auditor must review the audit procedures applied, review written representation and working paper of other auditor. Once reliability of the work carried out by the other auditor is in question, the principal auditor should perform a detailed review of the other auditor's working paper and pay attention on : existence of proper documentation of audit work carried out by the other auditor, adequacy of the audit programs, scope of work covered by the other auditor, whether appropriate test of control and substantive procedures have been performed. If principal auditor not satisfied with the working paper, the principal auditor might request the other auditor to perform the supplementary tests, or alternatively, the principal auditor might need to perform the test. Next, AI610, considering the work of internal auditing. Internal auditing defined as an appraisal activity established within an entity as a service to entity. Its function include, among other things, examination, evaluating and monitor the adequacy and effectiveness of the accounting and internal control systems. The external auditor should consider the activities of internal auditor and their effect, if any, on external audit procedures. The scope and objective of internal auditing vary widely and depend on the size and structure of the entity and the requirement of its management, among others. 1. Review of the economy, efficiency and effectiveness of operations including non-financial control of an entity. 2. Review of compliance with laws and regulations and other external requirements and with management policies and directives and other internal requirements. 3. The establishment of adequate accounting and internal control systems is the responsible of management which demands proper attention on a continuous basis. 4. This include review of the means used to identify, measure, classify and report such information and specific inquiry into individual items including detailed testing of transactions, balances and procedures. An external auditor may review the work of an internal auditor. Internal auditor would be able to advise the external auditor on important issues, so that the external auditor can be more focused on their job. During the planning stage, the external auditor should first of all understand the internal auditor's scope of work, function and objectives. The external auditor's preliminary assessment of the internal auditor function will influence the external auditor's judgment about the nature, timing and extent of the external audit procedures. The external auditor, in order to accept the work of internal auditor, should evaluate the internal auditor in terms of : 1. Technical competence, the skill and expertise of the internal auditor. 2. Professional due care, the process of internal audit with due care such as proper plan and supervision. 3. Scope of work, audit evidence obtained is sufficient and appropriate for external auditor to form an opinion. 4. The documentation on planning of internal auditor. 5. Sample size selected by internal auditor. Lastly, AI620, using the work of an expert. Expert means a person possess special skill, knowledge and experience in a particular field other than accounting and auditing. As auditor, there are times for certain assertions requires an expert opinion and involvement. For example, The measurement of work completed and to be completed on contracts is progress and legal opinion concerning interpretations of agreement, status and regulations. An expert may be engaged by the entity, engaged by the auditor, employed by the entity and employed by auditor. When determining the need to use the work of an expert, auditor will consider: 1. The materiality of the financial statement item being considered. For example, the materiality of underground mineral. 2. The risk of misstatement based on the nature and complexity of the matter being considered, and 3. The quantity and quality of other audit evidence available. Procedures to be performed or consideration by the auditor. 1. To ensure that the expert is professional, competent to take up the engagement, such as have a license, experience and reputation. 2. To assess the objectivity of the expert. The objectivity of the expert will be impaired when the expert is employed by entity or related to the company in other manner. In this case, auditor may need to undertake additional audit procedures. 3. The auditor need to consider: A. The objective of involving the work of an expert. B. The scope of work of the expert's work. The expert is needed just to give auditor the quantities of mineral underground but not for market value. C. The assumption and method used by the expert. The auditor should have some general knowledge about the assumption and method used. For example, on valuation of land. 4. The auditor of course does not have the same expertise and knowledge with the expert. However, based on knowledge and experience should go for appropriateness and reasonableness of assumption and method by the expert and figures reported. 5. The auditor should assess the appropriateness of the expert's work as audit evidence regarding the financial statement assertion being considered for as a basis of opinion. If an expert does not provide sufficient audit evidence to resolve, the auditor may: discuss again with management and the expert, applying additional procedures including engaging another expert, if required. If still unresolved, the auditor may modify the audit report: unqualified opinion with emphasis of matter on the methodology adopted by the expert is uncommon and the auditor is unable to make comparison on the results reported by the expert, or auditor may issue a qualified report due to lack of audit evidence or disagreement.